Hello and welcome, dear listener of Astro Secrets. The blackout didn't arrive with thunder or storm. It came silently like a thief in the night. At exactly 11:17 p.m., the lights in Willow Creek blinked once, then died. Street lamps flickered out, television screens dimmed into black, radios crackled and fell silent. For a heartbeat, people thought it was just another power outage, the kind they cursed the electric company for every summer. But then the silence stretched too long. Phones didn't buzz. Cars wouldn't start. Even the emergency generators at the hospital refused to hum. The world had stopped breathing. Ethan Cross was sitting in his second-floor apartment, hunched over his desk when the darkness swallowed the town. The glow of his laptop vanished mid-sentence, leaving him staring at his own reflection in the dead screen. His ceiling fan slowed to a halt, its blades cutting through the silence one last time before freezing. At first, Ethan swore under his breath and reached for his phone. No service. Not even a flicker of signal. That was when the screaming started. He pushed open his window and looked down into the street. People were standing outside their homes, flashlights in hand, voices raised in confusion. A man pounded the hood of his stalled pickup truck. A woman clutched her child, shouting for help. Ethan noticed something else. A handful of houses were wrong. Porch lights burned brightly 1 second, then blinked out the next. Only this time they didn't come back. Curtains rustled, doors stood ajar, but the people who had been there just moments ago were gone. Vanished. His pulse quickened. He grabbed his recorder, habit more than instinct, and clicked it on. Blackout across Willow Creek. Everything. Power. Cars, communications, completely dead. People are panicking. Some, I don't know how to describe this, some houses look empty. Like the families just disappeared. A knock rattled his door. Ethan flinched, fumbling the recorder off. It was Mrs. Harrow, the elderly woman who lived across the hall. Her face was pale in the faint glow of her candle. "Your phone work," she whispered. He shook his head. "Nothing." "Yours. Dead," she said. "All of them. Even my son's landline in town. And Ethan, something's wrong with the street." She pointed outside. Ethan followed her trembling finger. At the far end of the block, the road should have continued straight into town. But now it ended in darkness. Not the normal absence of light, but a heavy, suffocating void. Even the beam of Ethan's flashlight seemed to vanish as it touched it. "Like it's been erased," Mrs. Harrow whispered. Ethan shut his window. His reporter's instincts roared to life, drowning out fear. Something bigger than a power outage was happening. Something no one would believe unless he documented it. "Stay inside," he told her. "Lock your door." He strapped his camera around his neck, slung his backpack over his shoulder, and stepped into the night. The air felt heavier outside, as though the blackout had weight. Every breath came thick, metallic. Willow Creek, usually humming with late night crickets and buzzing neon, was silent but for the shuffle of confused neighbors. Then, above, a faint hum broke the quiet. Ethan froze, tilting his head skyward. The stars were brighter without light pollution, but they were wrong. The constellations shimmered strangely, warping as though he were looking at them through water. And then he saw it, a shadow gliding across the night sky. Not a plane, not a helicopter. Its shape was sharp, geometric, almost satellite-like, but far too low. A dark panel array, glinting in the starlight, drifting silently overhead. People in the street gasped. One man raised his flashlight to the sky, but the beam died instantly, swallowed before reaching the object. Ethan snapped a photo. The camera clicked, but when he looked at the display, the screen showed only static. The hum grew louder. Then, without warning, 3 more houses went dark. Porch lights cut out, TVs inside flickered and died, and when Ethan rushed to the windows, he saw no silhouettes. No families huddling in confusion, nothing. They were gone. "Jesus," someone whispered. Ethan's throat was dry, his voice barely working as he raised his recorder again. "Whatever that thing is in the sky, it's taking people. Whole houses. Families. They're just erased. I don't know how, but it's connected to the blackout." The hum faded, and with it, the shadows slid toward the horizon. The night was silent once more, but the damage lingered. Streets gutted of their neighbors, houses hollowed into tombs. Ethan forced himself to keep moving. He needed answers. He cut through the empty main street, past the diner with its darkened sign, past the church whose bells hung silent. He stopped at the gas station, its pumps frozen mid-fill. A spilled trail of gasoline shimmered in the moonlight where someone had vanished mid-action. And then he saw the first symbol. Spray painted in thick black strokes across the gas station's shutter was a mark, A circle split down the middle by a jagged line. Beneath it, 3 letters scrawled hastily UMB. Ethan leaned closer. The paint was fresh. His recorder clicked on again. Markings found on the shutter of a gas station. Symbol of a split circle. Letters UMB. No idea what it means yet, but it wasn't here yesterday. Someone, or something, left it. A gust of wind swept through the deserted street, rattling the loose sign above him. In the distance, dogs barked frantically, then went silent. Ethan turned slowly, every hair on his neck prickling. The silence felt too absolute, too engineered. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, the blackout was spreading. He could feel it. And whatever that satellite-like shadow was, it wasn't done, not by a long shot. Morning never truly came. When the sun rose over Willow Creek, it wasn't the usual warm glow of dawn. It was pale, washed out, like light filtered through dirty glass. The sky seemed too still, clouds frozen in awkward shapes as if painted there. Ethan Cross had spent the night wandering, documenting, writing in frantic whispers into his recorder. Now, with daylight barely breaking, he found himself on the main road that led into the heart of town. But there was no heart anymore. Cars were abandoned mid-turn. A school bus sat sideways in the road, its doors open, empty seats gaping like missing teeth. Half-drunk coffee cups sat on dashboards, steamless but fresh. It was as if the world had paused mid-breath and never resumed. Ethan muttered into his recorder, voice hoarse from exhaustion, downtown Willow Creek. Every vehicle dead, no sign of life. People didn't leave, they vanished. He lowered the device and snapped photographs, but every image came back distorted, smeared with static lines. He cursed under his breath. Then he noticed the cameras. Small, black, insect-like drones hovered at the edge of rooftops. They made no sound, their glass eyes reflecting the pale daylight. Ethan froze, his chest tightening. He had seen them before. Grainy footage leaked online from war zones overseas, experimental surveillance tech. But those were prototypes, unconfirmed. And now they were here. The nearest drone swiveled, its lens locking onto him. Ethan's stomach dropped. Slowly, he slipped into the alley between the bakery and the barber shop. The drone followed, gliding unnaturally smooth, silent as breath. He bolted. His shoes slapped against wet asphalt, echoing through the narrow alley. He cut hard around a dumpster, weaving into another street, only to find 3 more drones waiting, lenses flashing briefly with a dull red pulse. They were hurting him. Ethan ducked into the hardware store, its glass front already cracked. Inside, shelves were toppled, as if people had fled in panic. He crouched behind the counter, forcing his breath quiet. Through the broken window, he watched the drones hover in formation, patient, watching. "What do you want from me?" he whispered to himself. A metallic screech cut through the silence. He jumped, nearly dropping his recorder. It wasn't the drones, it was something deeper, heavier. The sound of metal grinding on metal. He followed the noise, inching toward the back of the store. There, near the storeroom, a steel door stood ajar, its hinges bent inward, as if something massive had forced it open from the other side. Beyond it, a staircase spiraled downward into darkness. Ethan raised his recorder, voice trembling. Found a hidden passage in the hardware store. Metal door forced open, leads underground. The sound came from here. He hesitated, staring into the black. The air rising from below was cold, stale, laced with the faint chemical tang of ozone. Every instinct screamed to stay away, but his curiosity, the same reckless drive that had carried him into countless dangerous stories, dragged him forward. He descended. Each step creaked beneath his weight, the stairwell shuddering faintly. At the bottom, the passage opened into a concrete corridor lit by a single flickering bulb. On the wall, more spray-painted symbols, the same circle split by a jagged line. But this time, the letters below were clearer. UMBRA. Ethan's pulse spiked. He crouched to examine the paint. It wasn't vandalism, it was a warning. The edges of the letters dripped as if rushed, smeared by a shaking hand. Someone wanted this message seen. Then he noticed the map. Pinned to the wall beneath the symbol was a torn blueprint of Willow Creek. Large black X's crossed out several areas: the hospital, the elementary school, the power substation. Written in red ink above them, SYNREZ. Ethan's hand shook as he whispered into the recorder, map of Willow Creek. Multiple locations marked with X's. The word synchronized written over them. This isn't a random blackout, it's systematic. Someone's keeping track. The screeching metal sound returned, closer now. He whipped his head down the corridor. The flickering bulb buzzed violently, then died. Pitch black. Ethan froze, listening. Something moved in the dark. Not the skitter of a rat, not the hum of a drone. Heavy, deliberate. A dragging step, followed by another, closer, echoing against the concrete. He fumbled for his flashlight. The beam cut through the dark and landed on a figure. At first glance, it was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark jumpsuit. But its head was wrong, tilted unnaturally to one side, twitching in small, stuttering jerks. Its eyes glowed faintly white, unblinking. The figure staggered toward him, each step metallic, as though its boots were magnetized to the floor. Ethan stumbled backward, the beam shaking wildly. The recorder slipped from his hand and clattered across the floor. His voice cracked into the dark. Not human. It's not. The thing lunged. Ethan bolted up the stairs, his chest on fire. Behind him, the grinding screech echoed louder, closer. He didn't dare look back. He burst out into the street, slamming the steel door shut. The drones were gone. Willow Creek was silent once more. Ethan collapsed against the wall, sweat slick on his face, heart slamming. He picked up his recorder, voice shaking with every word. There's something down there. Not a man, something else, connected to Umbra. Whatever this blackout is, it's not just about power. It's about us. His words hung in the silence. Then, faintly, from above, he heard the hum again. The satellite shadow returned, drifting across the pale morning sky. And with it, the town seemed to hold its breath. The hum lingered long after the shadow drifted away. Ethan stood frozen in the street, recorder trembling in his hand, staring at the sky as though the pale daylight might peel back and reveal what really hung above it. Umbra. The word from the graffiti clung to his mind like a splinter. He had covered conspiracy theories before, aliens in Roswell, government mind control programs, secret bunkers beneath Denver Airport. Most were noise, exaggerated stories fed by paranoia. But Umbra wasn't noise. Umbra was painted deliberate, left behind as if by someone desperate for him to see it. And now he couldn't unsee it. He needed answers. Ethan made his way back to his apartment, ducking past abandoned cars and shattered windows. The silence of Willow Creek was suffocating. Streets that once echoed with laughter, traffic, and life now felt like a movie set abandoned mid-production. Inside his apartment, he spread his notes across the table. Scribbled observations, crude sketches of the symbol, fragmented descriptions of the not quite human figure in the underground corridor. He booted his laptop on instinct, forgetting the blackout. The screen remained dark. He cursed under his breath. But then he remembered his old filing cabinet. For years, Ethan had kept copies of declassified military reports he'd requested under the Freedom of Information Act. Most of them were redacted beyond usefulness, but sometimes, they contained slivers of gold. He rifled through the folders, tossing aside documents until his hand froze on one. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency DARPA 2007. Project Umbra. His pulse quickened as he slid the paper free. The pages were yellowed, heavily censored, black bars choking most of the text. But certain words punched through: satellite synchronization array, electromagnetic field manipulation, temporal displacement trial subjects, containment protocols necessary. Ethan swallowed hard. He whispered into his recorder, found an old FOI document. DARPA 2007 mentions Project Umbra. It's a satellite system, linked to electromagnetic fields in something called temporal displacement trials. This isn't a blackout. It's an experiment. He scanned further. In the margins, a scrawled note, handwritten by some forgotten bureaucrat before the report was declassified. Umbra not defense. Umbra test. Test. Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The satellite wasn't a weapon against enemies. It was a tool, meant to bend something far more fragile than walls or machines. Time, the missing families, the frozen clouds, the distorted stars. They weren't accidents, they were side effects. A sudden knock jolted him upright. He froze. Another knock. 3 sharp raps echoing down the hall. Mrs. Harrow. No. Too forceful. Too deliberate. Ethan grabbed his recorder and crept to the peephole. 2 men stood outside. Black suits, black ties, black sunglasses. Their posture screamed military, but their faces were unnervingly blank. One held a small device, a scanner of some kind that pulsed with blue light. They were searching for him. Ethan backed away slowly, pulse thundering in his ears. His only way out was the fire escape. He slid open the window, careful to stay silent. The moment his feet hit the iron grating, the scanner inside chirped. A voice, low and mechanical, carried through the thin walls. Subject detected. Ethan bolted. He clambered down the fire escape, nearly slipping on the rusted metal, and hit the ground running. Behind him, the apartment door crashed open. Shouts filled the stairwell. He sprinted through the alley, weaving between dumpsters, heart hammering. A drone swooped overhead, lens flashing red. A spotlight cut through the air, sweeping the alley like a blade. Ethan ducked into the shadows of an abandoned laundromat. He pressed against the cracked tile wall, forcing his breath shallow. Through the broken front window, he watched as the men in suits emerged onto the street. One raised his wrist to his mouth, speaking into a concealed mic. Umbra Subject 1 confirmed. Proceed to containment. Subject 1. Ethan's stomach dropped. He wasn't just a witness anymore. He was part of it. The suits moved past, scanning the street with their pulsing device. The drone circled once, then drifted away, its hum fading into the distance. Only when the silence returned did Ethan dare to move. He whispered into his recorder, voice raw. Black, suited operatives confirmed. Military or government, not sure. They called me Subject 1. Whatever Umbra is, I'm not just observing it. I'm inside it. He sank into the laundromat's shadows, clutching the recorder like a lifeline. His mind reeled. Umbra wasn't just testing the town. It was cataloging them, labeling them. And if he was Subject 1, how many others were there? He thought of the vanished houses, the erased families. Maybe they weren't gone. Maybe they'd been reclassified, shifted, stored, contained in some timeline Umbra had carved open. And maybe he was next. Ethan closed his eyes, forcing his breath steady. He had two choices: keep running until they caught him, or keep digging until he found out why Umbra had chosen Willow Creek. He opened his eyes, gripping the recorder tighter. He already knew which choice he would make. Somewhere, buried in this blackout, was the truth, and he was going to tear it out of the dark, even if it killed him. The highway into neighboring towns stretched straight through the desert, a ribbon of cracked asphalt under a washed-out sky. Ethan's shoes slapped against the pavement as he walked, his backpack heavy with his recorder, camera, and the few files he had managed to grab before fleeing his apartment. The air was unnervingly still. No cars, no wind. Even the desert insects had gone silent. Every few miles, he passed abandoned vehicles. Trucks stalled mid-journey, doors hanging open, belongings scattered across the seats. Once, he found a child's backpack lying in the middle of the road, its zipper still open as if dropped in haste. No footprints, no tire marks, just absence. Ethan spoke quietly into the recorder. Highway 17 heading toward Fairview. Town should be 20 minutes ahead. No power, no engines, no people. The blackout spread here too. Question is, how far? He stopped, squinting at the horizon. Fairview sat at the edge of the desert, a small but bustling town with neon diner signs, gas stations, and a railway depot that always bustled with activity. He had been there dozens of times. He knew what it should look like. But today there was nothing. As he drew closer, his chest tightened. The town wasn't just empty, it was gone. The highway ended abruptly, asphalt crumbling into a vast crater. Ethan staggered forward, boots skidding on loose gravel, and stared down into the hollow where Fairview should have been. It wasn't rubble. It wasn't ruins. It was glass. The crater stretched for miles, its surface smooth and reflective, as though the earth had melted under unimaginable heat. The outlines of streets, foundations, entire neighborhoods shimmered faintly beneath the glass, frozen mid-erasure. His throat constricted. He whispered into the recorder, Fairview is gone, not destroyed, erased. The land itself looks vitrified, like sand fused into glass. Buildings, roads, people, all dissolved. This isn't a blackout. It's extraction. He crouched near the crater's edge, touching the smooth surface. It was warm, humming faintly beneath his palm, as though alive. Suddenly, the hum deepened. Ethan stumbled back as the glass pulsed with light. Images rippled across its surface. Flashes of houses, cars, figures frozen mid-movement. For a heartbeat, he saw a family at their dinner table, faces blurred, mouths open as if speaking. Then the light flickered, and they were gone again. His heart pounded. The people weren't dead. They were trapped. Umbra hadn't destroyed Fairview. It had pulled it out of sync with reality. A sharp crack split the silence. Ethan's head snapped up. Across the crater, two black SUVs sat at the edge, their matte paint blending into the pale landscape. Men in suits climbed out, carrying equipment. Tripods, scanners, cases etched with the same symbol Ethan had seen scrawled across Willow Creek, the split circle. They moved methodically, pointing strange devices at the crater, scanning its surface. One adjusted a control pad, and the glass rippled again, brighter this time. Ethan's skin prickled with static. He ducked low, heart racing, snapping photos with his camera from behind a jagged rock outcropping. The images came out smeared, warped, as though the crater itself refused to be documented. Then one of the suits turned. Even from this distance, Ethan felt the weight of the man's gaze. His sunglasses hid his eyes, but Ethan knew he had been seen. The man raised his wrist, speaking into a mic. Umbra synchronization site secure. Unauthorized observer detected. Ethan cursed under his breath and scrambled back from the ridge. The suits moved fast, more drones buzzing to life overhead. Their hum grew louder, vibrating through Ethan's chest. He sprinted down the slope, boots skidding on loose rock, lungs burning. The ground shifted beneath him. The crater pulsed again, a wave of light surging outward. Ethan felt the air ripple, tugging at his body, pulling him sideways as though the world itself had tilted. His vision blurred. One moment he was running, the next he saw double images of himself, flickering like overlapping film reels. He stumbled, gasping, and forced himself forward. The pull weakened as he reached the highway again, collapsing to his knees. Behind him, the crater glowed brighter, the suit standing unmoved at its edge as if accustomed to the distortion. One lifted his scanner, pointing it in Ethan's direction. The hum of a drone grew deafening. Ethan bolted into the desert brush, weaving between scraggly mesquite and jagged rocks. The drone's spotlight cut across the sand, chasing him like a predator. He ducked behind a boulder, clutching his recorder to his chest. His voice shook as he whispered, "Fairview is synchronized, wiped into Umbra's timeline. The suits are monitoring it, maintaining it. They saw me. They know I'm watching. If this message is found, I think I've seen what Umbra really does." The spotlight swept past his hiding place. He waited, holding his breath until the hum drifted farther away. When silence finally returned, he dared to move again, pushing deeper into the desert, away from the road, away from the crater. But his mind was already unraveling. If Umbra could erase an entire town without a trace, how many others had already been synchronized? And how long before Willow Creek became just another patch of glass? Ethan trudged through the desert brush, each step heavier than the last.
It wasn't a blackout.
His lungs
It was
burned,
a synchronization
throat raw
test.
from dust.
They aren't
He hadn't
dead.
dared
They're
return to
trapped
the
in a
highway,
parallel
too
loop.
exposed. Instead, he carved a path along dry creek beds, hiding beneath outcroppings whenever a drone buzzed faintly in the distance. The recorder never left his grip. It was the only proof he had, his only anchor against the insanity swallowing the world. But exhaustion gnawed at him. His canteen was nearly empty, his legs trembling. He found a cluster of rocks that offered some shelter and collapsed against them. The horizon shimmered with heat, though the air was strangely cold. For the first time since the blackout began, he closed his eyes. "Hey," a voice said. Ethan's eyes snapped open. His hand went instinctively for his backpack. Standing a few feet away was a man, tall, gaunt, face half hidden beneath a hood. His clothes were mismatched. Scavenged a military jacket, torn jeans, boots caked with dust. The man raised his hands slowly, palms open. "Relax. If I wanted to turn you in, you'd already be gone." Ethan's pulse thundered. "Who the hell are you?" The man tilted his head. "Same as you. A survivor." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "From Willow Creek?" The stranger shook his head. "Fairview." Ethan's chest tightened. "That town's gone." "Not gone," the man corrected softly. His eyes flicked to the horizon. "Synchronized." Ethan's skin prickled. "You know about Umbra." The stranger crouched across from him, pulling a dented flask from his jacket and taking a long swig. His voice was low, steady, but carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. "I was in Fairview when it happened. One moment, everything normal, lights, cars, people. The next, silence. And then time cracked." Ethan leaned forward, gripping the recorder. "What do you mean cracked?" The man's gaze unfocused, as though replaying the memory. "It was like reality split. My wife was standing at the stove. She turned to ask me something, and halfway through the sentence she froze. Everything froze. The air, the sound, even the dust in the sunlight. And then she was gone." His jaw tightened, eyes glistening beneath the hood. "When I ran outside, I saw them. Suits, drones, scanners. They didn't panic, they expected it. And then I realized this wasn't an accident, it was a test." Ethan's throat went dry. "Project Umbra." The stranger nodded slowly. "You've seen the symbol." Ethan showed him the sketch in his notebook. The stranger let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, that's it, the mark of a prison." The silence between them stretched. Ethan's recorder clicked faintly, capturing every word. Finally, Ethan asked, Why were you spared?" The stranger's smile was grim. "I wasn't. Not really. I slipped. When the synchronization wave hit, I was in the basement. For some reason, the field didn't take me. Maybe the shielding, maybe dumb luck. But I've been running ever since." Ethan's mind raced. If this man had survived Fairview's erasure, he might hold the key to understanding Umbra. "What are they testing?" Ethan pressed. The stranger's eyes flicked to the recorder, then back to Ethan. Time, or more precisely control of it. Umbra's not about destroying towns. It's about moving them. Shifting them out of sync like files dragged into another folder. The people, they're not dead. They're trapped. Held in a loop. Ethan's hands trembled. You've seen them. The man nodded. Sometimes the field flickers. You catch glimpses. Shadows of people repeating the same motion over and over, caught between seconds. My wife, I saw her once, stirring a pot that wasn't there anymore. Like a ghost on repeat. Ethan's stomach churned. It explained the flashes he'd seen in Fairview's glassy crater. The family at their dinner table, frozen mid-breath. Why? Ethan asked, voice hoarse. Why experiment on towns? On people? The stranger's expression hardened. Because soldiers make noise. Armies draw attention. But a blackout, a vanishing, it can be written off as a disaster, an accident. Umbra is practice. They're testing how much of reality they can erase without anyone outside noticing. Ethan's recorder hummed in his hand. His voice was barely a whisper. And me. They called me Subject 1. The man's face darkened. Then you've already been marked. Umbra doesn't make mistakes. If they labeled you, it means you're part of the test now. They're watching you. Measuring you. A faint buzz broke the silence. Ethan stiffened. Drones. The stranger cursed under his breath and pulled Ethan deeper into the rocks. Two black machines drifted overhead, lenses glowing faint red. They hovered for a long moment, scanning the desert floor. Then, just as silently, they glided away. Ethan exhaled, shaking. The stranger leaned close, whispering harshly. You want to survive. Then you need to stop running blind. There's a place they don't want you to find. A facility underground. That's where the machine is, the heart of Umbra. You get there, maybe you find answers. Maybe you find a way to end this. Ethan's voice cracked. Where? The man reached into his jacket and pulled out a crumpled map. He shoved it into Ethan's hand. Here, old military base. Supposed to be decommissioned. It's not. But before Ethan could speak, the man stood, pulling his hood tighter. Don't follow me, he said. They're already watching. If you live long enough to see that facility, you'll understand. And then he was gone, vanishing into the desert. Ethan sat frozen, the map shaking in his hands. The recorder clicked on. His voice was low, reverent, terrified. I met someone, a survivor. He says Umbra is a prison for time itself. That the vanished aren't dead. They're trapped in loops. And there's a facility. A machine. I have the coordinates. He looked down at the map, the red circle scrawled around a patch of desert 20 miles north. The next step was clear, and far more dangerous. The map weighed heavier in Ethan's hand than his entire backpack. Each red inked line, every scrawled note, felt like a thread pulling him closer to something he wasn't sure he wanted to see. 20 miles north, that was all. Just 20 miles across dead desert to the supposed heart of Umbra. But as he walked, every step carried the weight of inevitability. The sun dipped low, staining the horizon blood orange. Long shadows crept across the cracked earth. He kept to the dry ravines, ducking beneath jagged ridges whenever the faint buzz of drones reached his ears. His nerves were frayed to threads, each sound amplified, each gust of wind like a whisper in his ear. Hours passed before he saw it, a squat, crumbling chain-link fence half buried in sand. Beyond it, a cluster of buildings loomed, weathered concrete scarred by time. The base looked abandoned, windows shattered, roofs sagging. A relic from the Cold War, forgotten and useless. But Ethan knew better. The facility wasn't dead. It was hiding. He pressed record on his device, his whisper sharp in the desert silence. Approaching the site, old military architecture, early 60s design, outwardly abandoned but too intact. No graffiti, no signs of scavengers. Fence lines recently reinforced. This isn't forgotten, it's maintained. The wind shifted, carrying a faint hum. Not the hollow whine of wind through broken glass. Something mechanical, pulsing beneath the ground. Umbra, Ethan's skin crawled. He cut a small hole in the fence with a rusted pair of wire cutters he'd scavenged earlier. Every snap of metal on metal echoed like a gunshot. He slipped through and crept toward the nearest building, a squat concrete blockhouse with its door half ajar. Inside, dust coated the floor, but the air smelled wrong, too clean, too sterile. No rodents, no decay. Just faint ozone, like air after lightning. He clicked on his flashlight. The beam swept across bare walls, peeling paint, and then footprints. Dozens of them pressed into the dust, leading deeper inside. Ethan followed. The hallway sloped downward, the air cooling as he descended. The walls changed too, Peeling paint gave way to fresh steel panels, smooth and seamless. The deeper he went, the less abandoned it looked. At the bottom of the incline, he found an elevator door. Modern, gleaming, completely out of place in a building that should have been condemned decades ago. His chest tightened. He whispered into the recorder, "This is it. The disguise ends here. The real facility is underground." The elevator required a keycard. Ethan cursed softly, running a hand through his sweat-matted hair. For a moment, defeat pressed down on him. But then he noticed the panel's seam, slight but enough. Someone had pried it open before. With shaking hands, Ethan dug into his backpack and pulled out a screwdriver. He worked the screws loose, heart pounding. Each metallic scrape echoed like a scream in the silent corridor. Finally, the panel popped off, revealing wires. He hesitated, then twisted two together. Sparks lipped, the elevator hummed. A rush of cold, sterile air swept over him. He stepped inside. The descent felt endless. The numbers on the display climbed past B1, B2, B3, until they stopped displaying at all. The hum grew louder, vibrating through his bones. When the doors finally parted, Ethan's breath caught. The underground facility stretched wide, cavernous, lit by sterile white light. Catwalks crisscrossed over enormous chambers filled with humming machinery. Glass tubes lined the walls. Inside them, faint silhouettes twitched, flickering like film caught on repeat. Ethan staggered forward, pressing against the glass. His stomach lurched. They weren't silhouettes. They were people, men, women, children, frozen mid-motion, their eyes wide with terror, limbs moving in broken loops as if trapped between seconds. One man's hand was perpetually half-raised, his face blurred. A child's laugh was stuck in silent replay. Fairview, the missing families. His voice cracked into the recorder. They're here. All of them. The town's synchronized, not destroyed, not gone. They're kept here inside these stasis fields. Time isn't passing for them. It's looping. Repeating. He pulled back, bile rising in his throat. A low rumble echoed through the chamber. Ethan froze, heart hammering. Across the catwalk, two figures emerged, suits. Sunglasses, earpieces, identical as mannequins. One of them carried a tablet, its screen pulsing with streams of data. The other raised a scanner, sweeping the air. The device chirped. "Subject 1 located," the man said flatly. Ethan's blood turned to ice. He ran, boots thundered across the catwalk, metal rattling beneath him. The suits shouted, their voices cold and mechanical. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the chamber. Ethan ducked into a side corridor, lungs burning, legs screaming. He darted past rooms filled with machinery he couldn't begin to comprehend. Rings of steel spinning slowly, glowing panels etched with incomprehensible symbols. The hum grew louder, deeper, as though the earth itself were vibrating. Ethan risked a glance back. The suits were still behind him, unhurried, as though certain they would catch him. He burst into another chamber and stopped dead. In the center stood a colossal machine, a ring 50 feet high, rotating slowly, sparks arcing across its surface. At its core, reality seemed to warp, light bending inward, colors bleeding, the air rippling like water. The Umbra machine. Ethan's breath caught. His recorder clicked faintly in his hand. This is it. The heart of Umbra. The machine that's tearing towns out of time. Behind him, footsteps closed in. Ethan stared into the warping center of the ring. It pulsed with a strange, impossible light, a light that beckoned. He had seconds to choose run or step into the unknown. The machine pulsed, its core shimmering like liquid glass. Ethan's breath came in ragged gasps, sweat dripping down his temple as the suits closed in behind him. Their footsteps were steady, unhurried, confident, as though they already knew the outcome. He clutched the recorder. His voice shook. Umbra machine confirmed. Central chamber. I don't know what it does, but a harsh voice echoed down the catwalk. Subject 1, do not enter the synchronization field. The words froze him for half a second. Subject 1, always Subject 1. But why him? The hum deepened. The ring of steel glowed brighter, arcs of light leaping like lightning between its edges. Reality within the circle shimmered, folding in on itself. He saw glimpses of Willow Creek, of Fairview, of faces frozen in half motion. And then he saw something else. Himself. For a split second, another Ethan stood inside the ring, recorder in hand, eyes wide with terror. The image blinked away, leaving only distortion. Ethan's chest tightened. He didn't think. He ran, straight into the machine. The world collapsed, colors bled into sound. Time fractured into shards. He felt himself pulled, stretched, folded, compressed. His lungs burned, his heartbeat echoing 1,000 times over. He stumbled forward, and then silence. He stood on Main Street, Willow Creek. But it wasn't right. The town glowed faintly, edges blurred like an overexposed photograph. People filled the streets, but their movements were wrong, stuttering, looping. A woman bent to pick up her grocery bag, the same apples spilling over and over. A man waved to a neighbor, his arm never finishing the arc. Ethan staggered backward. His own apartment loomed across the street. The door was open. Inside, he saw himself at the table spreading out notes, whispering into his recorder. "No," Ethan whispered. His voice trembled. "This isn't real. This is a loop." He bolted down the street, desperate to escape the fractured vision. But every corner folded back into itself, streets repeating, the same faces stuttering. Willow Creek was a cage. Then he heard it, a whisper, not from the recorder, from the air itself. Subject 1. Ethan froze. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, layered like 1,000 voices speaking in unison. "You are not an observer. You are the constant." His pulse thundered. "What does that mean?" He shouted into the emptiness. "Why me?" The voices overlapped, rising and falling. Umbra requires an anchor. Without the constant, synchronization collapses. You are the first, the stable variable. Ethan's knees weakened. Anchor constant. They hadn't chosen him at random. He was part of the design. The air shimmered. Figures appeared in the street, faceless silhouettes in suits. Their movements were smooth, unbroken, unlike the frozen townsfolk. They advanced toward him, hands outstretched. Ethan backed away, fumbling for his recorder. "If anyone finds this, Umbra isn't just testing towns. It's testing me. I'm the anchor." The figures drew closer, their faceless heads tilting unnaturally, as though studying him. The hum of the machine grew louder again, reverberating through his chest. And then he was back. The chamber reformed around him, the massive machine glowing at full power. His legs buckled, and he collapsed to the floor. His stomach churned, vision doubled. The suits stood in a circle around him. Not distorted this time. Real. One stepped forward, expression blank. Synchronization complete. Subject 1 is viable. Ethan's breath caught viable. The man lowered his scanner. "You endured exposure to the loop without degradation. You are the first to survive synchronization outside containment. The experiment can proceed." Ethan tried to scramble backward, but his legs wouldn't obey. His body felt heavy, as if weighed down by invisible chains. "You're insane," he rasped. "You're trapping people, whole towns, in these loops. Families, children. They are variables." The man cut in coldly. "Necessary for calibration. Time cannot be bent without anchors. You are proof the anchor can hold." Ethan's chest heaved. His mind reeled. He wasn't just witnessing Umbra, he was fueling it. "Why me?" he demanded, voice breaking. The man tilted his head, almost curious. "Because you looked. Because you refused to turn away. The moment you saw beneath the surface, Umbra saw you. Consciousness determines synchronization. You are the constant because you chose to be." The words crashed over him like ice water. His curiosity, his drive to uncover the truth. It hadn't protected him. It had doomed him. The man raised his wrist mic. "Proceed to phase 2. The machine roared. Light filled the chamber. Ethan's scream was swallowed in the hum as the world shattered again. The light consumed everything. Ethan felt himself split apart, stretched across dimensions like a thread pulled too thin. His scream fractured, echoing in places he couldn't see. Then, just as suddenly, the light collapsed, and he was slammed back into himself. He lay gasping on cold steel, the hum of the Umbra machine reverberating through his bones. But something was different. When he staggered upright, clutching his recorder like a lifeline, the chamber was gone. No catwalks, no tubes, no suits. Instead, he stood in a vast white hall, endless, seamless, sterile. The walls glowed faintly, and the air vibrated with a low, steady rhythm, like the heartbeat of some colossal beast. He wasn't alone. Figures dotted the hall, scattered in clusters. Some sat curled against the walls, rocking silently. Others paced, muttering incoherently. A few stood still, their eyes blank as if staring through invisible glass. Ethan's stomach turned. These weren't townsfolk, these were others. Survivors. One of them noticed him. A woman with tangled hair, her face hollowed by exhaustion. She stumbled toward him, clutching a cracked wristwatch in her hand. "You're new," she whispered, voice trembling. "Another subject." Ethan's throat tightened. "Subject 1, he said almost without meaning to. Her eyes widened. "One? They told us one didn't exist, that it was a myth. You're real." Before he could answer, a sharp crack split the silence. A shimmering figure appeared down the hall, one of the faceless suits. Its form glitched, flickering like static, but its voice was steady. Subjects. Phase 2 begins now. The others in the hall stiffened, some whimpering, some clutching their heads. The woman beside Ethan grabbed his arm. Don't resist. If you fight, they erase you. Ethan's voice was raw. Erase. She shook her head violently. Not kill. Worse, they pull you back into the loops. Forever. The suit raised its hand and the white walls dissolved. In an instant, Ethan and the others stood on the edge of another crater, glassy and gleaming like the one that had swallowed Fairview. Except this wasn't a memory. This was happening now. A whole new town flickered in and out of existence before them. Houses, cars, people, all stuttering, glitching, sinking into the glass like moths caught in amber. Screams echoed faintly, then warped into silence. Observation required, the suit said. Subject 1, lead. Ethan's chest heaved. What are you doing? He demanded, voice cracking. You're erasing another town. The suit tilted its faceless head. Not erasing. Integrating Phase 2 test scale. Larger populations. Faster synchronization. Ethan's stomach lurched. His voice shook into the recorder. They're not stopping. Umbra isn't contained to Willow Creek or Fairview. They're moving on. Whole towns. Maybe cities. Phase 2 is escalation. The woman gripped his arm tighter. Her voice was barely a breath. They use us to measure it. To stabilize it. We're test subjects, Ethan. They're building something bigger. He turned to her sharply. What bigger? What's the endgame? Her eyes filled with terror. They want a world they can control. A reality they can pause, rewind, and repeat. Umbra isn't just a machine, it's a new timeline. One they own. Ethan's pulse thundered. The ground beneath the new town shimmered, the glass spreading outward like ink in water. Buildings toppled silently into the glowing surface, people vanishing mid-step. The sight stole Ethan's breath. He shouted at the suit. Why? Why are you doing this? Who ordered this? For the first time, the faceless figure responded in words not cold but almost reverent. Umbra is not government. Umbra is necessity. Time is unstable. You anchor it. Humanity survives through synchronization. Without Umbra, collapse is inevitable. The words rattled in Ethan's skull. Umbra wasn't a weapon. It was a solution. At least that's how they framed it. But survival at the cost of entire towns, of reality itself. His hand shook as he raised the recorder. If this reaches anyone, they're rewriting the rules of time. And they think it's the only way to save us. But it's not saving. It's assimilation. The suit stepped closer. Subject 1, anchor. You will lead the next phase. The woman beside him sobbed, shaking her head. Don't do it. Don't give them what they want. Every anchor before us, they burned out, they broke. But you lasted. You're stronger. That's why they chose you. Ethan's chest tightened. Stronger. Chosen. He wasn't sure if that was hope or a death sentence. The glass crater pulsed. The hum deepened. The town below vanished completely, swallowed whole. And then the white hall returned. The subjects around him slumped. Exhausted, broken. Some whispered prayers. Others stared blankly into the glow of the walls. The suit's voice filled the chamber. Phase 2 successful. Phase 3 commences soon. Then it vanished. Ethan staggered, gripping the recorder like a lifeline. His voice trembled as he spoke into it. They won't stop. Phase 1 was towns. Phase 2 is scale. Phase 3, I don't know, but it's coming. And I'm at the center of it. His knees gave out. He sank to the floor, the recorder pressed to his chest. The woman crouched beside him, eyes haunted. Ethan, if you really are subject 1, you might be the only one who can break this. Her words struck him like a knife. Break it. But as the walls pulsed around them, humming like a machine older than time itself, Ethan wasn't sure if Umbra could be broken, or if it was already too late. The hum never stopped. It throbbed through the walls, through the floor, through Ethan's own chest. The white hall flickered faintly, as if the machine itself was breathing. He sat with his back against the wall, recorder clenched in his fist. His words were ragged. This is subject 1. Phase 2 is complete. They're preparing phase 3. I don't know what that means, but it won't stop here. It won't stop until... His voice broke. Until what? Until every town was synchronized. Until the world itself was swallowed. The woman, his only ally in this nightmare, knelt beside him. Her eyes darted nervously at the blank walls. Phase 3 isn't just bigger. It's everything. The whole system. Once it starts, there's no undoing it. Ethan shook his head, breath shallow. Then we stop it. Her laugh was bitter, hollow. People stronger than us have tried. They're gone now. Erased. Loops inside loops. Ethan pressed the recorder tighter to his chest. Then we try anyway. If Umbra needs an anchor, maybe I can pull it down. The hum deepened, rattling the floor. A ripple spread across the white walls, peeling them away like paper. In their place, Ethan saw the chamber again. The colossal Umbra machine towering before him, arcs of light snapping across its surface. The suits encircled it motionless, like priests around an altar. A voice filled the air. Not one voice, thousands layered together until they shook his bones. Phase 3. Global synchronization commencing. The machine roared. Light bent inward, colors twisting into impossible shades. Images flooded Ethan's vision, cities flickering, oceans freezing mid-wave, millions of people caught in fractured loops. The world wasn't ending. It was being rewritten. The woman clutched his arm. "Ethan, we have to run." But Ethan wasn't listening. His gaze locked on the core of the machine where reality itself warped like liquid glass. And there, just for an instant, he saw himself again. Not one self. Hundreds. Versions of him across timelines, all clutching recorders, all screaming silently into the void. Some were trapped in loops. Some were broken, eyes vacant. But one, just one, looked straight back at him, lips moving. "Break it." Ethan's breath caught. That was the answer. He wasn't chosen because he was stronger. He was chosen because he was the only one who still believed he could fight. He ripped free of the woman's grip and staggered toward the machine. The suits turned in unison. Subject 1, stop. But Ethan didn't stop. He sprinted across the catwalk, lungs burning. Recorder clutched tight. The machine's pull grew stronger, dragging him toward its core. His skin tingled, vision doubling. Time fractured around him. He saw himself tripping, falling, dying a dozen different ways, yet still running. He shouted into the recorder, his voice raw, defiant. "If anyone hears this, Umbra isn't salvation, it's a prison. And I'm ending it." He hurled himself into the core. Light swallowed him whole. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, silence. Ethan opened his eyes. He was back in Willow Creek. The street was quiet, the air heavy. But something was off. The shadows were wrong, repeating themselves. The clouds above were frozen, locked in a loop. His apartment door stood open across the street. Inside, he saw himself again. Sitting at the table, spreading out notes, whispering into his recorder. Ethan's chest heaved. He staggered forward, shouting, "Hey, don't do it! Don't follow it!" But the other him didn't hear, didn't see. He kept whispering into the recorder, just as Ethan had that first night. The realization hit like a blade. He hadn't escaped. He had never escaped. He was still inside Umbra, just another loop, another subject 1, doomed to repeat his discovery until the machine deemed otherwise. His recorder clicked faintly in his hand. His voice was hollow. "This is subject 1. If you're hearing this, then maybe you're outside. Maybe you're real. Please, don't look, don't search, don't follow Umbra. Because once you see it, it sees you." The clouds flickered. The town stuttered. Ethan's vision blurred. And then darkness.